first day with us, put a 1 into the chat. You're welcome, everyone. Welcome to all the ones that are in here. We're welcoming you to your first day of Performing the World, but this is the third day of Performing the World. On our first day, we had an amazing opening session, followed by Playing for Change, Towards Performing Our Future, and Creating the Power in the Face for Disaster. On our second day yesterday, we started off with Creating the Power India, Poetry, Performance, and Power with the Windy Brow Center in South Africa, Creating New Performances of Faith, What is Dementia Teaching You, Say Beautifully with Strangers with Angelo in Italy, and the last but not least, PETA, Control and Shift, Reclaiming the History of the Filipino People. We are now moving on to day 3 and introducing right now, coming to the Performing the World stage, is Challenging Gender Violence with Organizing, Theater and Performances, introducing Sanjay and Tamanna.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, great to see you.
Great to see all of you. Lovely.
And we're good to start, Tamanna, Sanjay.
Okay, all right. So, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are very excited to speak with all of you and present our work to you. I will be introducing us and then we'll dive into the presentation. So I am Tamanna. I am the core lead at an organization called Shakti Shalini, which is an organization that works on gender and sexual violence. And I'm part of the management of that organization. And Sanjay here is the founding president of Pandies Theatre, which is an activist theatre group. And Sanjay will be talking in more detail about Pandies and its journey later on in the presentation. So now I'll be diving into the presentation. I'll just screen share, just give me a minute. Okay. All right, so our presentation is called Challenging Gender Violence with Organizing, Theatre and Performance. Shakti Shalini and Pandies have been working together since 1995. In this presentation, we'll cover Shakti Shalini's work as well as all that we have done collaboratively between Shakti Shalini and Pandies. Okay, so this will be the structure of the presentation. First, I'll be speaking about the history of Shakti Shalini. Then we'll talk about the current programs of Shakti Shalini. Then I'll be discussing a specific project through which Shakti Shalini and Pandies collaborate, which is Artivism, Art for Activism. And then Sanjay will be talking about the process and impact of the work done between Shakti Shalini and Pandies. And then we'll be concluding. So Shakti Shalini's history. Shakti Shalini's history is very much to be understood within the feminist movements of India, and that's the context in which we'll try to understand it. These are our founders, Shahjahan Appa, she was lovingly called Appa, and Satyarani Chadha. They were two women who came together to found this organization, and I'll be talking about what brought them together. And one was a Hindu woman, one was a Muslim woman. So across community and religious lines, we believe that we want to come together, and women can really take the lead in that and do feminist work. So here Shahjahan Appa writes, she says, "I'm not afraid of anyone. To be able to do anything, you must have courage. Balancing your enthusiasm and consciousness helps you get the work done. That is how I have always worked." That's her thought about her work. And Satyarani Chadha says, Feminism means that you fight for yourself, that you become strong, and you don't discriminate between your sons and daughters. I lost my daughter years ago, but I saved thousands and thousands of others. So the loss of her daughter is where we'll go into. So both Satyarani Chadha and Shahjahan Begum were united on a joint loss. Their daughters, their young daughters, who were newly married, were burned to death on the pretext of insufficient dowry. And that happened to both their daughters. And it is this common loss that united them and brought them together. So dowry back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and still is a very, very common phenomena wherein the woman, the bride, is looked at as a liability. And so if she is to be married into a family, and in South Asia, usually when women get married, they enter the family of the groom. So she is a liability. So to make up for that liability, other material benefits must be given along with her. It could be money, it could be cars, it could be any jewelry, it could be material benefits that the bride's family gives to the groom's family to make up for having given a daughter. And this is a very common practice, still is. Now, what was happening in the 60s, 70s, 80s hugely was this phenomena called bride burning, where a lot of young brides were burned to death, to the point that an entire terminology such as bride burning came up. A lot of young women brides were burned to death on the pretext of insufficient dowry, because the families would not find the dowry enough, or they would keep asking for more dowry even after marriage, and then they would eventually burn the daughter-in-law to death. And they would often tell the police that she was cooking and she died by a gas stove burning. So also gas stove deaths as cases were very common. So it is this loss, very brutal, traumatizing loss, that brought these two women together. And that is how they founded Shakti Shalini in 1987. Shakti Shalini began with an intention to work on dowry, but expanded to work on all forms of gender sexual violence, cutting across different genders. Shakti Shalini founded the first shelter home for women in distress in Delhi, which is the capital of India, in 1987. And then Shakti Shalini worked. Now I will capture the first 2 decades of Shakti Shalini's work. We've been around since 1987, so for 37 years. But the first 2 decades looked very different, and we've grown hugely since then. So the major areas we worked on in the first 2 decades were casework. So survivors would come to us and we would provide various support services. And we would also do counseling of family members, natal family, marital family. And that time it was called family counseling. Now we don't use that term anymore because we don't want to restrict counseling to the family institution. We use the term social mediation now. But that time it was family counseling and casework. Then with a lot of urban settlement communities, socio-economically marginalized communities, Shakti Shalini would work on community awareness and casework. Shakti Shalini did a lot of art-based interventions with Pandies, since Pandies and Shakti Shalini have been partnered since 1995. Shakti Shalini did gender sensitization with a lot of police personnel, and training of a lot of young students through internships and training programs. Shakti Shalini did capacity building with a lot of other NGOs and organizations on building their legal awareness, on building their survivor support skills. And what I really want to highlight is Shakti Shalini's advocacy work on issues of dowry, rape, and domestic violence. In fact, Shakti Shalini played a key role in the establishment of the Domestic Violence Act 2005 that is in place currently in the legal system of India. So that is the first section of my presentation, and I want to show you 2 videos by our founders. This one, the first one is by Satyarani Chadha, who speaks about the case that she fought for her daughter and how it progressed, and how she feels she is responsible for her daughter's death and her work around that issue.
मैंने लॉ करना है, मैंने कहा ये बहुत बढ़िया लड़का मिल गया मुझे। कहती है तो लो तो फिर नहीं हो पाएगा, और लड़के तो आ ही जाएंगे जो मेरे नसीब में है। मैंने कहा नहीं बेटा, मरवानी थी मरवा दी। मुझे तो यही है, मैंने मरवाई अपनी बेटी, चाहे कोई कुछ भी कहता है। लड़का मैंने देखा था, उसने तो नहीं देखा, वो तो कुछ नहीं जानते थे। मैंने 21 साल केस लड़ा है, कहने को होते हैं 21 साल। 21 साल 6 महीने बाद उसको सजा हुई, तो ये सब कहने लगे 7 साल की सजा हुई, तो ये सब मुझे कहने लगे चलो आंटी कुछ तो हुआ। मगर 2 महीने बाद हाई कोर्ट ने बेल दे दी।
जब ये सब होता है और आप कोर्ट में जाते हो, आपको गुस्सा नहीं आता है?
तो बहुत ज्यादा आता गुस्सा आने के लिए, मैं तो कहती हूँ रो पड़ती थी। और शाबाश है शक्ति शालिनी की एक स्टाफ का। मैं कहती थी क्यों मेरे पीछे पड़े हुए, तुम्हें क्या, तुम तो शक्ति शालिनी में बैठ गए ना। मेरी बेटी मरती ना ये शक्ति शालिनी बनती। मेरी बेटी मारी गई है और नहीं मरनी चाहिए, मगर मर तो नहीं है, मर रही है। देखिए तो हम फिर उनको लेटर डाल देंगे कि आपकी वाइफ हमारे पास आई, हमने एक तरफा बात सुनी, आपसे भी सुनना चाहते हैं। फिर हम दूसरा लेटर थोड़ा सा जोर का डालेंगे कि आप आए नहीं, हम आगे कार्रवाई करने जा रहे हैं। फिर हम नोटिस दिलवाएंगे।
Okay, so that was Satyarani Chadha. The next video is by the second founder, Shahjahan Begum, who talks about what her story, her journey, her work, and what feminism means to her.
मेरी बेटी को दहेज के लिए जला दिया था, मार दिया था जान से। वहाँ से मुद्दा शुरू हुआ मेरा। लेकिन मेरे मन के अंदर उससे पहले से भी कुछ था कि जो मैं चाहती थी, अगर मेरे पड़ोस में कोई लड़ाई झगड़ा हो जाता था तो मैं उनके बीच में भी बोलने लगती थी। तो मेरे घर वाले हमेशा मेरे से बोला करते थे दूसरों के घर में जाकर दखलंदाजी करने की बहुत गंदी आदत है। लेकिन जब बेटी को जान से मार दिया और बेटी के मसले को लेकर चले तो बहुत सी औरतों से जुड़े। लड़की का कौन सा है? लो जी, ये कहाँ लड़की है और ये कहाँ बच्चा?
लोग कहती मुझे कुछ भी कमी नहीं, मेरा दिल ही नहीं लगता है। माँ भी पूछती उसकी, तुझे तेरी साथ डांटती क्या, तेरा मियाँ कुछ कहता, कोई कुछ, अरे मुझे कोई भी कुछ नहीं कहता। मेरा तो दिल ही नहीं चाहता है रहने को, मुझे तो ये आदमी ना अच्छा लगता।
जब तुम्हारी बहू नाराज है, हम चलते हैं तुम्हारे साथ, हम बात करेंगे उनसे और हम उनसे पूछेंगे कि बेटा तुम्हें क्यों नहीं यहाँ अच्छा लगता है। अगर परिवार पसंद नहीं है तो उसका कोई हिसाब है, तुम अपने शौहर को लेकर कहीं अलग रह सकते। और अगर तुम्हें शौहर पसंद नहीं है फिर तो ये सोचना पड़ेगा कि तुम अपनी जिंदगी को मौत में ना बदलने के बजाय तुम अपनी इनसे तलाक लेकर अपनी आज़ादी जिंदगी जैसे गुजारना चाहती हो वैसे गुजारो। वो चली गई थी 3 महीने तक, वो अपने घर रही, 4 महीने पूरे 4 महीने अपने घर थी। फिर उसको ये लोग ले आए। अरे यार उससे बात करें ना, तो चाहता क्या है उससे हमारा मतलब निकल गया है।
दिली मोहब्बत है उससे।
सारे मर्दों को दिली मोहब्बत होती है, समझ गई ना तुम, दिली मोहब्बत होती है ये। नारीवाद सोच नहीं आती ना, नारी आंदोलन का एक अंधियाव आता, ना हमारे पर लगते, ना हम उड़ते, ना हम यहाँ तक पहुँचते। हम क्या जानते थे किसको कहते। हम अपनी माँ को भी अपने जुल्मों का शिकार देखा हमने, फिर हमारे ऊपर जो जुल्म हो रहे थे हम उन्हें वो भी सह रहे थे। लेकिन जब नारी आंदोलन का एक तूफान आया तो उस तूफान में जाने को किसका दिल नहीं चाहेगा? सभी का दिल चाहेगा। जिन लोगों ने बहुत कुछ घरों में सहा है तो वो तो बाहर निकलने का, ताले तोड़ने की भी कोशिश करेगा।
This is an absolute personal favorite video of mine. I just love the way she talks about how feminism came as a storm and it gave us wings, and who will not want to fly. So this was the first section of my presentation, which is to give you a glimpse into the history of Shakti Shalini. It's a history that I am myself still unraveling after 9 years in the organization. There's a lot there. Okay, now we'll move to the second section of the presentation. This is going to be the longest section. It is about all our current initiatives. You will see how the first 20 years have influenced a lot of the work we do now. We have taken it forward, but we've also really expanded and really come at the issue from multiple directions in a very, very structured way. So I'm just going to dive into that. Okay, so we have current programs. We have 4 major programs, and the first 2 are bigger. So I'm going to spend more time on those. And then the third and fourth are slightly smaller. So this is the first program, which is Response to Sexual and Gender-Based Violence, SGBV, or Survivor Support Services. Now, to give you some of the characteristics of this program, with whom do we do this program? One is adult survivors of sexual and gender-based violence, and we also work with their children. In this, we have survivors of domestic violence, natal and marital both, intimate partner violence, rape, sexual harassment, whether cyber or workplace or just street sexual harassment, trafficking, both domestic trafficking within India and cross-border trafficking, and gender discrimination on issues of clothing, mobility, education, career, freedom of any kind. And so those are the issues we work in and the groups we work with. The scale, it's a pan-India program. We work with survivors across the country. On an average, 350 to 400 survivors are what we are supporting every year, out of which about 100 to 120 go in for long-term interventions. And then we work with their children. So that comes to a group of about 20 to 25 in a year till now, but we are really working to expand our capacities on working with children. In terms of demography, we are cutting across lines of gender, sex, sexuality, age, region, language, caste, religion, nationality. Of course, majorly cis-het working class women, but also cis-het men, queer and trans people, and people cutting across barriers of class. What services do we provide? We have counseling, crisis intervention and rescue support, legal counseling and litigation aid, mental, physical, sexual, reproductive health care, shelter home for female assigned at birth persons, education aid, skills training, art-based activities, career aid, awareness building, housing aid, social mediation, and follow-up. These are all the services. It's not time-bound. We work with someone for 1 month, someone for 3 years, it varies as per the need of the person. And then what are the services we have for children? We have education aid, mental, physical health care, play-based interventions, child protection services, and rehabilitation work. So that's the characteristics of our first program. And what is the politics that grounds this program? So the first is the idea of agency, choice, self-determination, and individuality. What violence does is violence takes away agency. It takes away someone's right to make a choice, and our work is to restore that. So we don't tell survivors what interventions they should go in for or that they need. We lay out the different interventions we have, and they pick whether they want to go in for them, what they want to take up, they want to come back 3 months later. They choose that recovery journey. Then a package of support services to cater to multiple needs. What we feel is when survivors have to go to different places for different services, that just becomes very hard for them and more barriers get built. So as you saw in the previous slide, we are providing a lot of support services in one place so that it's a whole package, because an individual has multiple needs, not just one need, and we want to be able to cater to as many of them as possible in one place. Interventions at an institutional level. So survivors need to navigate the police, courtrooms, healthcare, and that can be very hard because all these institutions are also patriarchal. So our counselors help them navigate those institutions and are with them side by side through that process. Building feminist alliance and solidarities. So the survivors live together at a group of survivors that need shelter home. They live together at our shelter home. So it's collective living. And in that space, then they build solidarities and connections with each other, which can be very charged in terms of the feminist potential of that living together at the shelter home. And also we have a group of ex-residents of the shelter home, which they themselves have named together, in which even after they leave the shelter home, they remain connected with each other and support each other, and we do sessions with the group. Then the subjective length of a recovery process. We don't limit how long someone must take to recover from violence and trauma, and how can we limit that process, right? But a lot of organizations do. For example, shelter homes very often have a time limit in terms of how long someone can stay, but how can one have a time limit? So we are very, very against that idea. We go as per the need of a person. Someone may need the support services, including shelter home, for one night. Someone may need the support services for 3 years. And we have to go with them in their process at their length. Enhancing parenting skills. So we also work with children, but we work jointly between the primary caregiver, which is usually the mother, but could also be the mother, father, grandparents. It could be a unit. So we work with the unit that is caregiving the child to develop and enhance parenting skills, so that parenting happens in a way that's more informed of child psychology, child development. Parenting is more respectful of children's agency. It's not ageist and dominating. So working on parenting skills of those survivors who have children, and working on the relationship between the child and the parent, is something our project does. And then breaking intergenerational cycles of violence. And that's where our work with children is rooted, because violence can pass on from one generation to the other, either as getting victimized repeatedly, or as perpetrating more violence, or even both, for example. So we want to arrest that cycle, and that's where we work with children. So that was our first program. And I want to show you these images from our first program. Top left is our Crisis Intervention and Counseling Center. Bottom left is play-based interventions happening with children. In the middle is a qualitative research we did called The Unspoken, on the violence done upon people by natal family. Because a lot of spotlight is given to the violence done by marital families, but we wanted to also bring more focus to violence done by natal family. Top right is Pehchan Shelter Home, which is, Pehchan means identity. So we hope for it to be a shelter home that enables identity building. And bottom right is a meal taking place at Pehchan Shelter Home. And the next is a testimonial by a survivor of trafficking that we had supported at Shakti Shalini.
My name is Winnie. I came here in India because there is another lady. He connects me with another lady here in India. He told me he have a job for hotel. When I come here in India, he going to pay me 60,000. I was very happy because my country, I will never touch 60,000. So when he told me 6,000 rupee, I was very happy. I came here. When I reach here, he take me to her home, which is Ludhiana. When we reach there, I sleep. Another day, I asked her, can I go to the work? And he told me, I need to go to the road to sell my body. I tell her, no, I can't do that because my country, I did not do that. He forced me, he tell me, when I did not go there, he will kill me. By that time, he already take my everything, passport, ID, my phone. So I need to go because I'm already there. I'm new there. I don't know anyone, so I must go. When I go there, he want 4 lakh. He want me to give her 4 lakh rupee. which is 500,000 in my country. So I go, but I get the work is too difficult. They start send for me people for Nigeria to beat me. So I was tired with beating because they beating me very bad. Even sometimes they use a knife. So I was tired with that. I decided to run away. I asked another girl I asked her to help me with some little money. He give me 1,000 rupee. I go to my embassy. When I reach there at my embassy, they do for me, they prepare for me my passport and everything, and they take me here in Succeed. Yes, when I reach here in Succeed, I feel better. Yes, because they already talk with me, give me hope, give me advice, they give me food, they give me body lotion, everything I need, even food. So when I reach here, I feel happy, so much happy.
So what are your feelings now since you are going home? You are now reintegrating with your family. You'll be meeting your family members after a really long time. So how are you feeling?
Wow, I feel too much happy. Too much happy. I feel too much happy. I'm already told my family I'm coming back. They were happy. They pray. I'm too much happy.
Right. Our second big program is prevention. So we can't just keep responding to violence, we have to prevent it. So this we do via grassroots community mobilization, and these are the characteristics. So with whom does this program take place? With 5 socio-economically marginalized urban settlement communities in Southeast Delhi. These are people who've migrated from different parts of North and Central India in search of better livelihood to Delhi. We work with approximately 2,000 to 2,500 people in these communities. We work with men, women, adolescent boys, and adolescent girls. There are also children, though our work is focused more on adolescents and men and women. Most of the men are small shopkeepers, auto rickshaw drivers, daily wage laborers, and the women are domestic workers or homemakers. Majority of the community is Hindu mixed castes. There are some Muslim pockets, and there's one entirely tribal community migrated from Rajasthan. The issues we see prevalent in the communities are marital and natal domestic violence, child early forced marriages, sexual harassment, patriarchal restrictions, and gender discrimination on education, career, clothing, mobility. Also, general issues are unemployment, sanitation and healthcare, lack of education, caste and religious discriminations. The interventions we do in these communities are door-to-door outreach, legal health, gender awareness, health aid camps, skills development, art-based activism, mobilization of community change agents amongst women, men, adolescent girls, and adolescent boys. So the politics that grounds this program. So extreme violence or violence does not come out of nowhere. It comes out of day-to-day patriarchal discrimination and day-to-day patriarchal norms. So with this program, we wanted to tackle patriarchy at the roots, and we wanted to address day-to-day gender discrimination because that's the foundation of more violence. Holistic awareness building. So what we see is that general awareness levels have to be raised for violence to come down. So it's not just talking about issues of gender. Awareness on rights, on freedoms, on health, on legal rights. Everything has to be taken together because it's an intersectoral issue. And so we do general awareness building in the communities, as that also mitigates the levels of violence. Grassroots change leaders. This is a central aim of our work in the community, is that one day we are irrelevant and there are change leaders in the communities taking the work forward. So this is where we create groups of men, women, adolescent boys, and adolescent girls in each community who are the feminist change makers and leaders in their respective communities. And we, of course, work closely with them on equipping them to be able to do that work. We work on masculinities-based interventions. So just within the last year, we have created a group of a team in our organization of 3 men who would focus on the men and boys in the communities through a masculinity-based approach to see how to bring men on board on the issue of gender equality, because again, gender equality is impossible to achieve without men on board. And then feminist skills training. So we have a skills center in the communities where we have interwoven feminism with skills training. So we teach beauty culture, cutting tailoring, basic literacy, English language, computer, macrame, notebook making, photography, music, lot of things. But within the modules of the course itself, then within sessions inside the course, and through informal conversations in the course, in the classroom, we try to raise topics of gender equality, all of that, in order to weave feminism into skills training. So there is economic upliftment as well as feminist upliftment. Then art for activism, which I will talk about in more detail, but this is a project that's focused on deploying art for activist purposes. And then social integration of survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. So what is very interesting is that our shelter home, the picture of which I had shown, is also where the skills development center is and is also where the community center is. So the women living at the shelter home, every day, they wake up to a skills development center where people from the 5 communities we work with are coming and learning skills with them. So the women in the shelter home are not in a custodial, secluded space where they are shut off from the rest of the world. They're regularly interacting with the communities who are coming to learn and learning with them, which we have noticed is a much better model for the rehabilitation of survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. And then intersectional ecosystem of feminist solidarity building. So here's a space which is a shelter home. People are coming from all parts of the country. People are coming from other countries. And then there are women, men, boys, girls coming from the communities that we work in. And it creates a very intersectional sort of feminist space where solidarities are built, and those solidarities are taken further beyond the shelter home and beyond the skills development center as well. So that's the work. Okay, top left is a cutting tailoring class. Bottom left is a gender awareness session. In the middle is a health aid camp in progress. Top right is a podcast series, which is on our YouTube on the work we do in our communities, the prevention-based work. We have an entire podcast series on it. And bottom right is a Women's Day celebration. In the next slide is a video in which you will see how we build protection committees, committees of change makers and change leaders in the communities.
हम हर एक कम्युनिटी में एक टीम बनाना चाहते हैं, वो ऐसी टीम जो कम्युनिटी में हो रही वायलेंस के अगेंस्ट बोल सके।
ऐसे लोगों को ज़्यादा इसमें ऐड करने की कोशिश करते हैं जो घर में रहते हैं, मतलब उनको बाहर नहीं जाना होता है, घर में ज़्यादा उनको टाइम स्पेंड करते हैं। और थोड़ा एक्टिव है, उनका कम्युनिकेशन स्किल्स अच्छा है, लोगों को प्रभावित करते हैं। तरह के लोगों को हम कम्युनिटी में ढूंढते हैं और उनके साथ हम अपना कमिटी फॉर्म करते हैं।
Okay, so those are our 2 major programs. I'm coming to our 3rd and 4th programs, which are a little smaller. So the 3rd program is media outreach for gender equality. The characteristics as well as the politics grounding this program is, firstly, intersectional and intersectoral feminist conversation on social media through posts, videos, testimonials, podcast campaigns. As has been highlighted a little bit in this presentation, we are creating a lot of content on our YouTube, on our social media. We have testimonials, we have videos, we have podcast series. We are doing campaigns on all sorts of issues because we really want to add to the conversation on social media on these issues in a manner that's intersectional and intersectoral. Then second is building feminist solidarity with the community of netizens through updates, engagement, and collaborative promotion. So we want a feminist netizen community coming together. We are regularly updating about our work, engaging with our audience, and we also promote the work of a lot of other organizations that we know are doing good work, because we are not in a competitive space, we are in a collaborative space. Feminist intervention into news media at local, national, and international levels. So this is something that's very dear to us. We work with a lot of national, local, and international news media houses. We worked with Scroll, Wire, NDTV, The Times Group, Hindu, Hindustan Times, Mojo Story, and internationally we worked with Sky News, BBC, CNN, wherein news media houses approach us for stories on these issues that we work on, and they want to interview the experts on ground, and they also want to interview survivors. And of course, with a full consent-based process, we try to support these news stories because they have a wider reach than we do, and through them, we can push the issues we want to. And then finally, survivor facilitation via social media. So a lot of survivors reach out to us via social media, and then our social media team is able to connect them to our crisis intervention and counseling team. Okay, I want to talk about some advocacy we've been doing on our social media. The first on the left is marital rape, which is not yet recognized as a crime legally in India. And a lot of work is going on in this, and Shakti Shalini has worked with 8 to 10 media houses on 8 to 10 news coverage. So we're really trying to do our bit on contributing to the conversation on marital rape in India. Then our advocacy work on natal family violence. This is a podcast series right in the middle called Not So Parivarik, which is not so family oriented. So it's on our YouTube, in which we're highlighting the issue of natal family violence. We also have a research report on natal family violence up on our website. And then on the right is our work on reimagining shelter homes for women. We want shelter homes to be more feminist, less restrictive, less custodial, less patronizing, and more feminist and freedom oriented. So we're really trying to push for those kind of shelter homes in the country. Okay, and I'll just plug this here. Please connect to us and please join. We are everywhere. Okay. Our last program is the mentorship program, which is very short. We work with the high school students who come to us for projects they are working on, internships with the college students, volunteerships with people who are employed elsewhere but want to give some time. We work with MPhil and PhD researchers to support their research if they're working on these issues. And we work with youth groups and college societies, and we do fellowships with the people from the communities that we work with, the 5 socio-economically marginalized communities. Fellowship is a 6-month intensive training process. Why do we do this? So there are 3 major reasons. We wanted to have a program that connects with people beyond what our other programs connect with. So students, young people, scholars, researchers, youth groups. We wanted a program that taps into this group. So that's what this program does. It expands our solidarity and movement building. It brings a lot of young people to us. So we really want to channelize youth feminist action because that's where all our hopes are. And then we want young people for our own purposes as well, which is to learn from them, and they keep us on our toes and they keep us thinking about things in a new way. So we really want young people around. So this program brings us all of that. Okay, so testimonials by our fellowship graduates are again on our social media. Okay. Now coming to the third section of the presentation, which is Project Artivism. It's art for activism. So the activities we do here are theatre, of course, in collaboration with Pandies. We've done a lot of theatre work, which Sanjay will talk about. Music, we have collaborated with Vibhor and Seco, which are music bands of an organization called Manzil Mystics, in which we've done some feminist music-based work. With films, of course, our own team has shown films in the communities we work with and done critical discussions on them, but we are also collaborating with Kriti Films and Anhad Films to come and do film festivals and film screenings and then hold discussions on them. These are all progressive films. We've done poetry slams. Some of the women who were living with us at the shelter home, they produce a lot of fine art and painting, which is again speaking about women's bodies, women's freedom, sexuality, all of that. And then story writing, where again with Sanjay we have collaborated with Borderless Journal, and stories by survivors who have been with us. They have written stories and those have been published. Okay, so what is the idea behind this, right? We feel art has an ideological elasticity. Art can be used for very regressive purposes. As we know, historically, very authoritarian regimes have used films for very, very regressive purposes and propaganda purposes. But art can also be deployed and used to bring about progressive feminist ideological change. And it is understanding this potential of art that we wanted a project that focuses specifically on this and specifically on bringing ideological change through art. So now we are selective with our art for this project. So what sort of art do we want? We want feminist, activist, inclusive, democratic, progressive art. What do we not want? In this project, we don't want regressive art anywhere in our organization, but also entertainment-based art is not for this project. We have it elsewhere, in the sense that in our shelter home, of course, women will sit and watch a movie and disengage, and all of that is welcome. But Artivism, the project, is focused specifically on a very strategic ideological change through art. And the artists. So artists who are either activist or willing to talk about the issues that matter through their art. That's what we are looking for in this project. Okay, so now why do we want to do this? Firstly, art's potential to influence not just minds, but also hearts. And it goes beyond the cerebral into the affective. So art doesn't just work at the intellectual, cerebral, theoretical level. Art can influence how we feel about things. So affective registers such as honor, such as love, such as desire, such as fear, these registers are where art can go and impact. And these affective registers are very much political. They are dominated by patriarchy, casteism, racism. We feel these ideologies. So to work on them, we have to feel differently. We don't just have to think differently, we have to feel differently. And art has that capacity to change and tweak how we feel about issues, because politics has to be at a felt level, not just at a thought level. So we want art because art can do that. And then the power of storytelling, which art brings. So art can make you visualize, can make you imagine, can make you tell a story, which then channelizes all the senses. And that is what we want to bring in through art. Critical thinking and questioning anything and everything. So as already stated, we are only going in for progressive and activist art, which then will raise questions on anything and everything, and to place anything up for questioning. Nothing is sacred, nothing is sacrosanct, everything can be questioned. That is what we want through art. Creative thinking and empathy building beyond the self. Again, through stories, through theater, through painting, the individual can step beyond themselves. They can step into another reality. They can step into another way of being. And that exercise in empathy can really open horizons and open a lot of space for imaginative, creative, out-of-box thinking that, again, artivism, we believe, can take forward. Solidarity building. Again, when a group of people come together and do theater or do any kind of art, it can create a lot of solidarity between them, which then can have a lot of feminist potential and a lot of healing as well in an interpersonal dynamic. And then individual expression. Art creates a space to express, which really centralizes the individual. and gives, and with violence, that individuality gets compromised. So we really do need to highlight and emphasize that through our project. And of course, art has a therapeutic impact through expression and creativity. So these are all the reasons we want to focus on this project. And finally, I'll just end with a short clip of a music festival, a feminist music festival going on at our Shelter Home Community Center, Skills Development Center, which is all the same building. Okay, and now over to Sanjay for the fourth section of this presentation, which is the collaboration between Shakti Shalini and Pandies, what that process has been and what the impact has been.
The sharing and the non-sharing.
Just give us 1 second, please.
Hi. Right, guys. So, Sanjay from Pandies. Most of you know the Pandies. And, well, we've been around PTW for about 13, 14 years. So the question is, why this conversation? Why this subsection, this module within this larger presentation? Two reasons. One, you dare not have a PTW without the Pandies. I mean, that's not even possible, whether you're in New York in person or you're doing online. Second, possibly equally important, is that Pandies has always been occupied, it's been extremely concerned with this aspect of sharing of methodologies. And it's been one of our major concerns. I mean, we are all revolutionaries in various parts of the world. And one of the greatest things that I have personally learned from PTW is that I met with some of the best people who are doing a lot of great work, but in little corners of the world. And the strength of bourgeois dumb ambassadors is that because of the money, it's able to conquer connection. And we are doing a lot of repetitive work in a lot of parts of the world without actually being able to connect. So this is really a sharing of a methodology that we and Shakti Shalini have worked out together. And I would like to sort of put this out for sharing rather than anything else.
Dear Ma and Pa, I am alive. I haven't died just yet. Although the temptation of a soothing sleep, which could numb my senses and last forever, is something that I desire the most right now. But you see, life is to be lived before death comes, however severe the dying gets. That's what Lawrence said. I'm in a shelter right now, miles away from you and the threat of being dragged by my hair and belted for not being a good child of yours. But the pain, the fear, the shuddering of heart, and that unexplained pain in my chest has accompanied me. I don't know what triggers it anymore. And I am eons away from understanding it. My escape was sudden. You must have not imagined in your wildest dreams that I would dare leave the house without your permission, or even estrange you. Perhaps you might not even be able to understand what inspired me to take such a step.
Pandies twist. Pandies tryst with Shakti Shalini goes back to 1996. The oldest and possibly the deepest tie for Pandies. The tie is relevant both in terms of the definitional process of the group's feminist core, in terms of not just collaborative proceeding theatre and patriarchal and anti-communal street performances, but also in detailed, in-depth studies of workshop theatre with survivors of domestic and larger patriarchal violence. I personally am fortunate enough to have interacted with icons like Satyarani Chadha, Shahjahan, where I would really say or whatever feminism I've learned really comes across from there. And of course, the very, very dynamic Sudhaji. She's Mad was the first project together. 10 years old, Shakti Shalini wanted a fundraiser and something to project their image out. And we did this play on the mental health. And well, it was the beginning of a long tryst. It is also around this time that Pandies started working in the shelter home at Nizamuddin. And I'd like to state, Shakti Shalini shelter home, they're not just shelter homes, they're something special. Because at Pandies, we've worked with a myriad of shelter homes for women, for children. And I'll just give one example, Nirmal Shaya, which is a part of Tihar Jail, where we were working just before we started working in Shakti Shalini's shelter in Nizamuddin, the first one. And this was a shelter home, a part of Tihar Jail, especially for underage girls rescued from brothels. And what we saw there was tragic, because there were girls apparently for 3 years in the home who were pregnant. And this is supposed to be a strictly shut out space. Probably the most tragic thing was that when we were coming away after a 10-day-long workshop, some of the girls came to members of the group. Knowing me to be a staunch atheist, they obviously couldn't make that prayer to me. But, in our usual way, we'd said that we'll come back in a month. And there were these girls telling some people in the group that please pray. When you come back, we're not here. We're back in our brothels. So that is the kind of reality that we were facing in shelters. And there was a space ensconced, right? A place where men were not allowed. In fact, members from Pandies, men, were probably the first to be allowed inside that shelter. And we tried at that point of time to create performances, but it didn't really work out because there was too much of flux and it didn't really work. So what we were doing instead was a series of performances in which Shakti Shalini was participating with us. Wales, one of the heaviest powerhouse performances of Pandies, basically on rape. I mean, the two projects coincided. The first time that Shakti Shalini worked headlong on late law reform was also when Wales was being done. And we had about 200 shows spread out over Delhi and neighboring states, projecting projecting a four in-your-face demand for a tightening up of laws on rape. This was also the time when street theatre with Shakti Shalini started. And I have particularly a small little clip here from Timur Nagar. I've cut out the sound in it because it just tells you the feel of the slum and where we were performing. And we had members of Shakti Shalini and Pandies going together as a part of further outreach so that people could come to Shakti Shalini's office and ask for help as and when need arises. Every performance, as is usual with Pandies, ended with a discussion. And as you can see, the discussions here got very violent as people talked about their issues within their feminist issues within patriarchal structures. Coming down to theatre of sharing, what does it mean? I'd like to say that it's really in 2017 that we evolved this format. It's a complex format and it has many layers to it. The idea was to get residents of the shelter to create from their experiences and present before diverse audiences. When we come to 2017, I'd like to iterate that a lot of changes had taken place as far as both organizations were concerned. Pandies was no longer that nomadic group which didn't have a place to rehearse. We'd be rehearsing in JNU, we'd be rehearsing in schools and colleges, wherever we could find place. Now we had a small little studio where we are sitting at the moment and having this watch party. We had that space where we could have performances, where we could have rehearsals. And Shakti Shalini was led by a very, very dynamic younger group, very savvy on social media and extremely efficient at getting funds. And suddenly, a lot of transformations had taken place, right? There was a kind of empowering of the alliance. And when we started working with the residents, Pandies techniques were tweaked to put more focus on the narration. We started very often with the residents giving us narratives of their experiences. Now, it needs to be remembered that, when a resident narrates an experience, it's already a performance. Because the person has narrated that before hostile, audiences like the police, often the judiciary, more sympathetic audiences like people in the shelter home. And now they're talking before their peers and they're talking about before people who want to hear them. So there's a kind of performative that comes in. There's a kind of catharsis at the very first level that begins to take place. It's a complex, extremely intense format. And what we did in this form was that at times the person narrates his own story, her own story, and at times they create out of another person's story. And we had a lot of presentations taking place at this point of time. What I have in a presentation is one format where girls from the shelter presented before a community around the shelter. There are two sections out here. The first is a Pandies member exhorting the audience to communicate, exhorting the audience to have an interaction, followed by the story. The story of a girl child who left her mother and now comes back repentant, seeking a kind of reunion.
सबसे जरूरी बात है कि बातचीत होना जरूरी है ना? लेकिन हम कोशिश ये करेंगे कि हम बातचीत सब लोगों से करें. आपस में तो हम घरों में भी बातचीत करते हैं.
You have here two Pandies members.
मैं तो घर से इसलिए भागी क्योंकि मेरा तुम पर भारी बोझ था. मैं भले ही तुमसे दूर चले गई, लेकिन तुम्हारे दिए हुए उसूल और सबक हमेशा ही मेरे साथ हैं, और उसी वजह से आज मैं इज्जत की जिंदगी जी रही हूँ. माँ, मुझे नहीं पता था कि मेरे जाने के बाद तुम्हें इतनी ज्यादा कठिनाई का सामना करना पड़ेगा. बस माँ, अब तुमने बहुत सह लिया. अब तुम चलो घर.
you had two Pandies member, Priya and Priyanka, asking the audience to participate. And then, of course, you have the story coming from one of the residents and another resident backing up that particular story. This particular aspect became difficult with the pandemic. Once the pandemic struck, for a little while, we were all stunned, we were all shocked. And talking to people like Tamanna, I mean, I realized that in the shelter, the worst that could happen was happening. There are 4 women at home. In the absence of the men going out, the violence was reaching new peaks. And that's when we decided to go online and have a lot of storytelling online. One example was what you saw right in the beginning. An educated girl speaking in the form of a letter to her parents. There were 4 stories that emerged from Shakti Shalini at that point of time. A very interesting one where the girl spoke in the voice of her unborn child and talked about the violence that the father, that is the girl's boyfriend, was reaping on the girl. And I mean, it's harrowing. It is harrowing for other reasons also, because the girl after a little while committed suicide. And it's something which left a very, very heavy mark on all of us. Okay. And, you know, these were narratives, harrowing narratives coming. And it was a part of a larger festival that we did in terms of 3 communities that we were working with, including Shakti Shalini. The work in the pandemic went on. And then we had a performance from the residents, okay, a sharp critique of masculinity. A part of the varieties of performances, this was in the shelter and streamed via Zoom for us and for others. I'll play a bit of it. Domestic violence, we talk about gender violence, right? What you're getting right now, what you've gotten right now, is something that comes, as I said, from the very stomach of the tiger. If Manna is around, Manna, I'd like you to say a few words and introduce the actors.
Hi, everybody. So Sir has already spoken about Shakti Shalini, and thank you girls for a wonderful performance. We have Kajal. Can you, yeah. So we have Kajal, Pooja, Preeti, and Rukhsar.
Well, we had one of our icons at Pandies as a facilitator for this particular production. What needs to be iterated is that everything was taken charge by one of the residents right there before you. And the story, the acting, the direction was done by the residents from within the shelter. They used Bollywood songs and Bollywood's depiction of masculinity as a critique of the way masculinity is pandered around, thrown around in our society. It was a very high moment because I mean, coming in the midst of a pandemic, right? Here were these girls talking about gender-based violence. I'd like to refer to one more performance that we did in the pandemic, and that was on same-sex love. Again, this was around the time of the second wave of the COVID, when things were really going bad, and there was some residents who were no longer residents, who were living by themselves, and there was a kind of interaction going on between them and those within the shelter. And repeatedly, maybe possibly because Pandies was revisiting that area itself, but repeatedly discussions on same-sex love or lesbianism came up. And it is interesting because some of the residents felt a sense of repugnance, felt a sense almost of revulsion with the idea. And others wanted to actually work on a script which would highlight this. We had heady discussions, we had debates, we had a lot of arguments as a part of the workshop effort. And well, they all decided to go for it finally. We made an offering, a script that I had done for part of a Pandies project in 2007. I mean, it was up there for them to appropriate, to change, to do whatever they wanted with it. And the result is fantastic. Also, the aspect of sharing went a level further because one of Pandies' actors, Anirudh, he played the part, the lead, the negative man within the production. And what I have here, in spite of the fact that it's in Hindustani, is the rendering of one of the girls of the woman, right, who is well molested, raped, beaten up for having an attraction towards the same sex. I'll just play this bit out.
यह मेरी कहानी है। ऐसे क्या देख रहे हो आप सब? सुनना चाहते हो मेरी कहानी? जे मैं याद करना नहीं चाहती उस वक्त को, उस पल को। आपको पता है मेरे साथ क्या हुआ? मगर हाँ, तुम मेरी कहानी सुन सकते हो, समझ सकते हो। मेरा दर्द और मेरी तकलीफ वो महसूस नहीं कर सकते। कमीनों नंगा किया मुझे, सिर मुंडवाया, मुंह काला किया, गले में जूते का हार पहनाकर बस्ती में घुमाया। कोई मदद के लिए नहीं आया।
I mean, this is a performance. And I'd just like to iterate that in spite of the glitches, I mean, I kept that section where the mute is playing up. In spite of the glitches, the sheer power comes through. And remember, the girl is performing, right? She's taking up a script. It's a particular subject that concerns her, right? These are not her lived experiences. And yet the power is coming through even across in a Zoom performance. This is the kind of sharing that one is talking about. I'd like to refer to one more video, one more interaction. And this is a very recent one where residents from the shelter worked along with members of the community to create a presentation. A presentation which is first put up at Studio 81 and then at the shelter itself. The dynamics of this were quite interesting because, you know, we brought to them, coming as we do from a progressive, atheistic, feminist approach, right? We brought in the whole issue of marriage. We kind of, put the issue of marriage and what are the problems with the issue of marriage. And of course, a lot of people, a lot of residents, as well as members of the community, had problems with that issue. And we were trying to propagate a movement towards a live-in. And everybody said yes to live-in as a concept. But the moment they would work out a situation, the moment they would work out an improv around that, the live-in would invariably lead towards a love marriage. That if you want to live together, you might as well get married. It wasn't an easy format because residents would keep backing out, community people would keep running away, Somebody's father would say, she's not showing up again, dare you to call her and we'll beat you up. And well, all kinds of things were happening. But what is interesting was that we allowed the project to go on. And for me, this became another incidence of the strength of workshop theatre. Because you cannot go to workshop theatre with even a partially worked out agenda. Workshop theatre has a way of turning your agenda around. And that's what I realized here. Because ultimately, for these girls, both within the shelter, right, and outside, the idea of a live-in was not acceptable. But then, neither was marriage. And so we got these two episodes, right, two-part aspects in the same play. Both were condemnations. And what stood out in capital letters was misogyny of our society. It is almost like saying it was a dark, deep play saying marriage, arranged or love, live-in, all right, it's a bad deal. It's a bad deal for women. And it was very stark, and I remember two aspects of it. I'm going to play a bit of it also for demonstrating the process, because here you see a little bit from the play, nothing much, but really about our attempt to initiate a multi-class audience. Because when a performance takes place in the studio, you have a lot of upper middle class people also sitting over here. And in the process of sharing, a lot of women from the upper middle class stand up to talk about their own horrendous experiences within matrimony, within a lot of zones. And in any case, the question answer and the emotional touching to the depth that these performances do is something to be born. And the focus of the last video is going to be more towards that side. We have the couple talking to a friend to get a space where they can put a live-in. But the live-in doesn't work, and we follow with another story of an arranged marriage which also doesn't work.
उनके अनुभव में ऐसा नहीं है, ओके? और मेरे को भी काफी हैरानी हुई कि शुरू में जब हमने अरेंज मैरिज करी, व्हाटएवर, जब लिव इन पे आए तो मुद्दा हो लिव इन का, लेकिन बाद में वो लव मैरिज बन जाए। वो बोले अच्छा अगर तुमको शादी करवा लो, तो ये लोग वो लड़की बोले हाँ ठीक है, तो इनफेरेंटली जो है वो वहीं तक सबमिट आके रुक जाता था कि एक किसी से प्यार हुआ और हाँ जी बोलो।
तो मेरा सवाल नहीं है किसी से, मैं बस ये कहना चाहती हूँ कि जैसे आप लोगों ने समाज के बहुत सारे टॉपिक से बात किया, भ्रूण हत्या हो गया, लिव इन रिलेशनशिप हो गया, अरेंज मैरिज को हो गया, तो मुझे लगता है कि जब आप कोई नाटक करते हैं या थिएटर करते हैं तो सबसे पहले आपको कहानी को बहुत समझना होता है, बहुत महसूस करना होता है, क्योंकि जब तक आप कहानी को महसूस नहीं कर पाते हैं, मुझे लगता है तब तक आप प्ले नहीं कर पाते हैं। तो आप लोगों ने काफ़ी अच्छे से उन सिचुएशन को समझा और आप लोग जो कर रहे थे बहुत ज़्यादा रियल लग रहा था। इवन एक टाइम पे तो मैं बहुत इमोशनल हो गई थी, तो मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा।
So guys, the process of interaction and a little bit about tentative conclusions and impacts. I really feel the theatre of sharing has been, in my experience, one of the highest, one of the best modes of theatre. And it is a multi-layered aspect. And it covers a lot of things that activist theatre, especially where Pandies is concerned, takes us. Sharing is important. One needs to put it out there, right? And hear other people. I mean, lowest, of course, this is my hierarchy, and you can just throw it out. The lowest aspect is possibly the cathartic one, but that's really, really required. You need to sit and talk. You need to get over it. And that's where theatre of sharing really comes into play. Because when you sit before a cop, or even before a counselor, it's your nerves are taut. You're tightened up. I mean, I can never forget, for instance, one girl talking to us, how she committed suicide, jumped off from the second floor, unfortunately did not die, broke both her legs. And when she was in hospital, her mother visited her and said, "Tujhe to khudkushi karna bhi nahi aata, you don't even know how to commit suicide." And the impact the stunning impact that it had on this room was another level. Collectivity. Creation as solidarity. Tamanna has talked about a lot about solidarity. But I really feel theatre, because when you come in theatre, you come together. It's a kind of solidarity, a kind of feminist solidarity which replaces the solidarity of money, the solidarity of religion, the solidarity of capitalism, where you're looking for alternate solidarities. And this is really very, very important because we are moving now into the visionary aspect of theatre. Theatre is vision, theatre is future. What can we do in future with it? It cuts across class barriers, and it's also going across barriers of age, class, and gender. Possibly brings us to the last bit, serving the highest purpose of bringing about a conversation between margins and the mainstream, or providing that bridge, right, between what lies in the margins and what constitutes the mainstream of our society. I'd like to stop here and ask Tamanna to conclude.
Okay. So, right. I will stop sharing. Sorry, there's a little technical issue at our end. Okay. Okay, so that was our presentation. Will not take up much time in conclusion. Just want to thank everybody. And, we've covered Shakti Shalini's history, our current initiatives, the Artivism project, and the collaboration between Shakti Shalini and Pandies, the process of that and the impact. That was our presentation, and we would like to close there, thanking everybody for joining, and especially PTW and Eastside Institute for hosting us and giving us this opportunity. And now we would like to welcome questions and comments. It doesn't just have to be a question, even if you'd like to share what you felt, what you thought, how it all felt, what you didn't like, whatever it is, we'd love to hear from you. So yes, open to everyone.
We have time for about 2 to 3 questions. So thank you. People could use the raise their hand function. They could speak out loud. They could write into the chat, whatever they would like to do.
Do it fast.
Just always moved by you. Always, Sanjay. It's lovely.
Thank you for that, Dr. Holmes. We have a question from Chris Helm. You can unmute yourself, Chris.
First of all, thank you. Wonderful work, and it well explained and all that. Couple of things. I really liked that what you were saying, Sanjay, about creation of solidarity. I just think that is so important, and I saw it in the work of both of yours. And I was also wondering, given the level of violence and in your work, do you experience concerns about violence in your presentations, in your workshops, and so forth? Is it an issue?
Yeah, Chris, at times it does become an issue. But I think we've been able to navigate it fairly well. I suppose it's the middle classes that comes into play. And at times, yes, there's an exposure. But I think since we are debate-oriented organizations, I think we manage reasonably well. I'd like Tamanna to speak out her experiences with Shakti Shalini, which I feel experiences of much more of direct violence than possibly we do.
So sometimes, yes, we have cases that are of survivors who are either very politically connected or economically connected. The people who are perpetrating the violence on them are very powerful in some way, or criminally connected So then our counselors who work on these cases sometimes do come under threat. We had one situation where one of our counselors, an attempt to abduct her was also done. So once a year or twice a year, we'll come into some situation of varying degrees where there will be a lot of pressure on our counselors and on the organization. But again, we are led by some very senior people who have done this work for 50, 60 years. So for us, we just look towards them to figure out how to navigate. And over the years, we are learning and we are able to manage it without any major harm till now, major physical harm on anyone till now. So navigating it, yes.
Great, thank you.
There's a person in our watch party who wants to ask a question. Sorry, Louis has a hand up.
I'll go after that.
Sure, person in the watch party.
Okay, I'll also like you to have a look at the watch party. It's a nice one, which tells you something about the solidarity out here.
If you could put the camera down a little bit, Sanjay, so we can see everyone.
Yeah, sure.
There we go.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Hello.
Beautiful. Someone from there had a question. You said, right? Sanjay?
Yeah. Samir, please ask the question.
So my question is to Sanjay sir.
Why?
No.
I refuse to answer that.
The question is.
You will ask me later on.
The question is that every religion has a misogynistic angle, touch to it. Every religion. I'm not talking about any one particular, but everyone. And when you say that you follow that religion, then you say that you follow that misogyny too. You agree to that misogyny. And if you agree to that misogyny, can you ever call yourself feminist? So as a theater group, what do you think about religion? And what do you think is its connection to the feminism that Pandies does?
But that's an easy one, coming as it does to a hardcore practicing of 45 years, at least 45 years atheist like me. Of course, I think religion is a truckload of crap. Okay. And I think it is against any kind of, apart from the mainstreamers, it's against everybody. Any kind of minority you belong to, be it a gender minority, be it a religious minority, be it anything. Yeah, and I would put myself down and say, yes, religion is against any thinking person. Why just women? I'm sorry, but that's my position, and a very strong one.
Tamanna?
Showcasing people. Go away from there. We don't want you.
No, I think I would differentiate here between my position and Shakti Shalini's position. Shakti Shalini is a diverse group of people, including people who are very, very religious and who have who want to bring about some progressive change in their own religion. So Shakti Shalini has a much more secular, inclusive sort of approach towards it. But talking about my politics individually, I very much like Sanjay. I'm an atheist and I reject all religion.
All right.
Yeah. Louis had a question. Could I please hear Louis, Des, if there's even 2 minutes?
Sure.
I thank you so much for everything you do. It's the most important thing I can say, and for sharing it. I was particularly taken with, well, so many things, Tamanna, how you could have the holistic approach to everything, and in particular the work to advocate for shelters to change how they run, because that seems so important. You go from one coercive situation to another, and it doesn't really work on helping you perform differently and become creative in how you live your life. And I also wanted to say that both of you gave such rich histories of your organization, which allowed us to see some of the rich history of India. And you did that so beautifully. So thank you very much.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. That's so encouraging to hear. Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes. Everyone, once again, give Tamanna and Sanjay a big, nice Zoom round of applause. Such an amazing. Yes. In literally 15 minutes, we are going to open the Zoom back up for the Freedom Theater, Creating Power Through Culture. And that is at 12:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you, everyone, so much for being a part of this first session of day 3. We will see you shortly.
And just to add, the Freedom Theater is from the West Bank. They're under siege, and they're going to be sharing their work despite being in a war zone. So if you can possibly make it, please come back in 15 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Palestine.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Sanjay and Tamanna.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Much love.